We are still in the age of rationalism, which began in the 18th century and is now rapidly nearing its close. We are all its creatures whether we know and wish it or not. The word is familiar enough, but who knows how much it implies? It is the arrogance of the urban intellect, which, detached from its roots and no longer guided by strong instinct, looks down with contempt on the full-blooded thinking of the past and the wisdom of ancient peasant stock. It is the period in which everyone can read and write and therefore must have his say and always knows better. This type of mind is obsessed by concepts, the new gods of the age, and it exercises its wits on the world as it sees it. It is no good, it says, we could make it better. Here goes, let us set up a program for a better world. Nothing could be easier for persons of intelligence, and no doubt seems to be felt that this world will then materialize of itself. It is given a label, human progress, and now that it has a name, it is. Those who doubt it are narrow reactionaries, heretics, and, what is worse, persons devoid of democratic virtue. Away with them. In this wise the fear of reality was overcome by intellectual arrogance, the darkness that comes from ignorance of all things of life, spiritual poverty, lack of reverence, and, finally, world-alien stupidity, for there is nothing stupider than the rootless urban intelligence. In English offices and clubs it used to be called common sense, in French salons, esprit, in German philosophers' studies, pure reason. The shallow optimism of the cultural Philistine is ceasing to fear the elemental historical facts and beginning to despise them. Every know better seeks to absorb them in his scheme, in which experience has no part, to make them conceptually more complete than actually they are, and to subordinate them to himself in his mind because he has not livingly experienced them, but only perceived them. This doctrinaire clinging to theory for lack of experience, or rather this lack of ability to make experience, finds literary expression in a flood of schemes for political, social, and economic systems and utopias, and practical expression in that craze for organization which, becoming an aim in itself, produces bureaucracies that either collapse through their own hollowness or destroy the living order. Rationalism is at bottom nothing but criticism, and the critic is the reverse of a creator. He dissects and he reassembles. Conception and birth are alien to him. Accordingly his work is artificial and lifeless, and when brought into contact with real life, it kills. All these systems and organizations are paper productions. They are methodical and absurd and live only on the paper they are written on. The process began at the time of Rousseau and Kant with philosophical ideologies that lost themselves in generalities, passed in the 19th century to scientific constructions with scientific, physical, Darwinian methods, sociology, economics, materialistic history writing, and lost itself in the 20th in the literary output of problem novels and party programs. But let there be no mistake, idealism and materialism are equally parts of it. Both are rationalist through and through, in the case of Kant as of Voltaire and Holbach, of Novalis as of Proudhon, of the ideologues of the wars of liberation as of Marx, of the materialist conception of history quite as much as the idealistic, whether the meaning and aim of it is progress, technics, liberty, the happiness of the greatest number, or the flowering of art, poetry, and thought. In both cases there is the failure to realize that destiny in history depends on quite other, robuster forces. Human history is war history. Among the few genuine historians of standing, none was ever popular, and among statesmen Bismarck achieved popularity only when it was of no more use to him. But Romanticism too, with its lack of a sense for reality, is just as much an expression of rationalist arrogance as are idealism and materialism. They are all in fact closely related, and it would be difficult to discover the boundary between these two trends of thought in any political or social romantic. In every outstanding materialist a romantic lies hidden. Though he may scorn the cold, shallow, methodical mind of others, he has himself enough of that sort of mind to do so in the same way and with the same arrogance. Romanticism is no sign of powerful instincts, but, on the contrary, of a weak, self-detesting intellect. They are all infantile, these romantics, men who remain children too long, or forever, without the strength to criticize themselves, but with perpetual inhibitions arising from the obscure awareness of their own personal weakness, who are impelled by the morbid idea of reforming society, which is to them too masculine, too healthy, too sober. And to reform it, not with knives and revolvers in the Russian fashion, heaven forbid, but by noble talk and poetic theories. Hapless indeed they are if, lacking creative power, they lack also the artistic talent to persuade at least themselves that they possess it. Yet even in their art they are feminine and weak, incapable of setting a great novel or a great tragedy on its legs, still less a pure philosophy of any force. All that appears is spineless lyric, bloodless scenarios, and fragmentary ideas, all of them displaying an innocence of an antagonism to the world which amounts to absurdity. But it was the same with the unfading youths, jingling, with their old German coats and pipes, John and Arndt, even, included. Stein himself was unable to control his romantic taste for ancient constitutions sufficiently to allow him to turn his extensive practical experience to successful account in diplomacy. Oh, they were heroes, and noble, and ready to be martyrs at any moment, but they talked too much about German nature and too little about railways and customs unions, and thus became only an obstacle in the way of Germany's real future. Did they ever so much as hear the name of the great Friedrich List, who committed suicide in 1846 because no one understood and supported his far-sighted and modern political aim, the building of an economic Germany? But they all knew the names of Arminius and Thusnelda. And these same everlasting youths are with us again today, immature, destitute of the slightest experience or even real desire for experience, but writing and talking away about politics, fired by uniforms and badges, and clinging fantastically to some theory or other. There is a social romanticism of sentimental communists, a political romanticism which regards election figures and the intoxication of mass-meeting oratory as deeds, and an economic romanticism which trickles out from behind the gold theories of sick minds that know nothing of the inner forms of modern economics. They can only feel in the mass, where they can deaden the dull sense of their weakness by multiplying themselves. And this they call the overcoming of individualism. And like all rationalists and romantics, they are as sentimental as a street ditty. Even the Kant social and the rights of man are products of the age of sensibility. Burke, on the contrary, like a true statesman, argued that on his side of the Channel men demanded their due as Englishmen and not as human beings, and he was right. This was practical political thinking, not the rationalistic issue of undisciplined emotions. For this evil sentimentality which lies over all the theoretical currents of the 2 centuries, liberalism, communism, pacifism, and all the books, speeches, and revolutions, originates in spiritual indiscipline, in personal weakness, in lack of the training imparted by a stern old tradition. It is bourgeois or plebeian, in so far as these are terms of abuse. It looks at human things, history, and political destiny from below, meanly, from the cellar window, the street, the writer's cafe, the National Assembly, not from height and distance. It detests every kind of greatness, everything that towers, rules, is superior, and construction means for it only the pulling down of all the products of civilization, of the state, of society, to the level of little people, above which its pitiful emotionalism cannot soar to understand. That is all that the prefix folk or people means today, for the people, in the mouth of any rationalist or romanticist, does not mean the well-formed nation, shaped and graded by destiny in the course of ages, but that portion of the dull formless mass which everyone senses as his equal, from the proletariat to humanity. This domination of the rootless urban intellect is drawing to a close. And there emerges, as a final way of understanding things as they are, skepticism, fundamental doubt as to the meaning and value of theoretical reflection, as to its ability to arrive at conclusions by critical and abstract methods or to achieve anything by practical ones, skepticism in the form of great historical and physiognomic experience, of the incorruptible eye for facts. The real knowledge of men which teaches what they were and are and not what they ought to be, the skepticism of true historical thought which teaches, amongst other things, that there have been other periods wherein criticism was all-powerful and that these periods have left little impress behind them, and the skepticism which brings reverence for the facts of world happening, which are and remain inward secrets to be described but never explained, and to be mastered only by men of a strong breed who are themselves historical facts, not by sentimental programs and systems. The hard recognition of historical fact which has set in with this century is intolerable to soft, uncontrolled natures. They detest those who establish them, calling them pessimists. Well, but this strong pessimism, with which belongs the contempt for mankind of all great fact men who know mankind, is quite a different matter from the cowardly pessimism of small and weary souls which fear life and cannot bear to look at reality. The life they hope for, spent in peace and happiness, free from danger and replete with comfort, is boring and senile, apart from the fact that it is only imaginable, not possible. On this rock, the reality of history, every ideology must founder.